F124 Driver Career Mode Season 1 Round number 5, the Chinese Grand Prix. That is what we are up to. Round 5 of this season. We are over the quarter waypoint in this season. And yeah, first time racing in China here, so that will be exciting. And it is also the first sprint weekend of this season. So that is something to get our grips into because it is a whole new sprint format. Of course, for 2024, it is now a one practice, sprint qualifying, the sprint, normal qualifying, and then the race. So we've got 2 lots of qualifying to go through this weekend. So that's something to take into consideration. As you can see there, sprint qualifying looks like we're going to have some rain, so that could be interesting as well. Looking at R&D before we get into this one, well, McLaren have really closed in on Red Bull now. They're right there up the top, and then it's Ferrari. We have now overtaken Mercedes as well, so we're now well into that group, kind of just off the front there. And yeah, pretty big gap back to the rest of the cars. And I made a mistake that I made a lot in previous F1 games. I didn't change engine components going into qualifying, so we are using a rather worn engine, MGU-H and turbo. But thankfully, because it's a sprint weekend, we only have to use these for the sprint, the sprint qualifying and the sprint race. So we will be able to put better components on for the race. But yeah, I do this all the time. I, put old components on for practice to use up the older components. Might as well not destroy new components just for practice, and then forget to change them going into qualifying, and you're then stuck with them unless you take a grid penalty. So yeah, that's just what we had to do in the end. Thankfully, I don't think it made too much of a difference, but yeah, it is what it is. Q1, easy going through there. I think it was both Saubers, both Hasses and Logan Sargent going out in SQ1. SQ2 as we get a big old moment on the curb on the left there. Very scary moment. Just getting up on the curb, also being behind Lando Norris here in kind of the dirty air. Didn't go particularly well just then, but thankfully no real issues for us as we go into this next corner. And looking pretty quick here on a set of soft tyres because the rain started coming down. That meant that even with that big snap, we ended up P1 at the end of Q2. Big shocks of George Russell, Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez out in Q2 here. Did not get the lap times in before the rain came. Russell didn't even get out on track, so don't know what was going on with him. And then as Q3 came around, as you can see, it is now rather wet. Now I went out on a set of intermediate tyres because when I went out, that was the recommended tyre that it was telling me to go on. As you can see, it is quite wet here. A little bit difficult in the F1 games to judge, whether it's intermediate or wet weather conditions. And although I was struggling here a little bit to get the power down, it wasn't absolutely undrivable. It was just rather tentative. You'll see if you have a look down the bottom there at my throttle inputs. I am being rather careful on the throttle because, yeah, the car is squirming around a little bit. But as I cross the line, it's P3. It is a fair way off, and yeah, I am quite a way off indeed, because everybody else is on wet tyres. So the track was pretty much just at that changeover point to wets. So unfortunately, we're going to be P10 for the sprint race. Alonso's there on the front row with Max Verstappen. Let's see what this first sprint race of the season has in store here in China.
Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting sprint. World champion Max Verstappen starts from pole position, and it's Fernando Alonso alongside. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Sainz, Oscar Piastri, Norris, Hamilton, Gasly, Ricciardo, Albon, Shaw, Ocon, Tsunoda, Perez, Leclerc, Russell, Zhou, Sargent, Magnussen, Bottas, and Nico Hülkenberg rounds off the grid. And with preparations almost complete, let's head trackside for today's sprint.
All right, here we go for the first ever sprint race in F1 24. We're starting P10 thanks to that terrible sprint qualifying session, but we are underway. We've got some slower cars ahead of us of Albon, Ricciardo, Gasly up there in P6 as well, looking pretty decent. We're going 3 wide through turn 1 with Albon and I believe Norris, who's had a pretty poor start as we continue on through here. And then Norris dives down the inside. looking quite aggressive there. It was 3 wide between myself, Ricciardo and Norris going through that corner. Made a little bit of contact with Albon apparently through turn 1, but no damage for either of us, I don't think. Just a little bit of kind of wheel banging damage as we headed through that corner. But we've made one position on Alexander Albon at the start of this race, but we'll have to see how this continues. Everybody is on medium tyres for this sprint race. Norris gotten back ahead of Ricciardo there. Gasly in the lofty heights of P6 in that Alpine, which is not a good car at this point in the season. Let me just remind you, I don't even know if they've scored points yet. Did they score points in the last race? I can't remember. They're definitely not on a lot of points, if they do have any at all. Although Gasly does then lock up into that next corner. That drops him behind Norris and Ricciardo and right into the clutches of us. But rather difficult here. One thing I ended up struggling with quite a lot this weekend was ERS deployment. Really struggled quite a lot with ERS deployment here with this big long straight. Struggled quite a bit. There's a lockup, I believe, for Hamilton up ahead, but I think he just about manages to keep the position ahead of one of the Ferraris, I believe of Carlos Sainz, because Leclerc had that terrible qualifying session. As we bounce over the final curb there, not very good first lap for us, P9 still. And we've lost quite a bit of time to the cars ahead, but we should be able to catch up because those guys, you know, Ricciardo, Gasly, they're not very quick. So although with DRS they are managing to keep up with the cars ahead, as we have an engine failure, and it's for Carlos Sainz as he goes into the hairpin. His engine goes up in smoke. There it is. Lots of smoke from the back of that Ferrari. And on lap number 2 of this 10-lap sprint race, Carlos Sainz is out of the Chinese sprint. I guess if any consolation, he'll be happy that it happened here and not for the main race. But yeah, very unfortunate for him. Meanwhile, a couple of laps later, Fernando Alonso is battling Verstappen for the lead of this race. Alonso got a good amount of pace here, just over 3 seconds ahead of the cars behind, and battling with Max Verstappen. So he's showing that our car has some pretty good pace here, and if we didn't have a bad quali, maybe we could have been up here with him, as he's going to the inside into turn 1, this long right hand corner, still side by side. Verstappen in the superior car, of course, in that Red Bull, manages to hang it around the outside. He then has the inside for the next corner, and he will manage to defend from Fernando Alonso, who maybe is going to have a go though, because he's going to get a better run out of that corner and down into the next big braking zone. Alonso now on the inside. Can Verstappen stick it around the outside, because that's then going to give him the inside for the next corner? This is a monumental battle here, and Verstappen finally does manage to defend that position. Piastri also looking pretty good in the McLaren. He's got Lewis Hamilton, the car ahead of him, who does not have DRS on the cars ahead. That's going to let Piastri have a look to the outside, but then dive to the inside and go for the move on Lewis Hamilton into turn 1. Nicely done. Hamilton just trying to keep his car there though, but has to slot in between the two McLarens, and that's Piastri now up into a P3 position, so looking good for him. He's currently the lead McLaren. We are still stuck behind these guys here as they are battling, and yeah, Gasly and Ricciardo especially. I mean, they're hanging with the cars ahead actually, and this just shows you how the DRS in this game really, you know, you really end up with DRS trains. As we have a little look at the inside of Gasly, but unfortunately can't make anything work, and then have a bit of a snap of oversteer around that corner. But yeah, this just shows you how DRS trains really do form in this game. Like the fact that Ricciardo and Gasly, I mean, yes, the cars ahead are battling, but the fact that those guys are managing to keep up with us is kind of ridiculous. We're going to sense an opportunity though. Big dive up the inside of Pierre Gasly as we head into this corner. We tried to make a move there last lap, didn't make it work. This time though, we make the position and we're up into P7. Daniel Ricciardo now the car ahead of us. Can we get past him before the end of this sprint 1 lap's time? Verstappen still leading the way. These guys have been swapping positions a little bit throughout this race, but Verstappen does lead at the moment. But what is this? He's pulling to the left. There's a yellow flag out. Alonso takes the lead of this race. Verstappen is going slow as we're about to come up behind the Dutchman. And there's smoke. There's smoke from the Red Bull. Verstappen is out of the Chinese Grand Prix with an engine failure, the second driver to have an engine failure this race, and it's Max Verstappen, the championship leader. That puts Alonso into a healthy lead in this race, and Hamilton now fighting Piastri for that second position, and he gets past Piastri at this current point in time. So Hamilton looking like he's going for a good result here as they head down to turn 1, but now Piastri is going to have the DRS. Both McLarens there with the DRS. Piastri's going to go for a late move up the inside once again on Hamilton. Great little move there. Hamilton going to try and stick it there once again, but he cannot make it move, and this time Norris is actually going to get his car around the outside of Hamilton. It's Brit versus Brit. Norris just chopped off there, but he's trying to make the move. Hamilton defending for his life, goes to the inside, Norris to the outside of the next corner. Norris is going to try and go round the outside, which will give him the inside for the next corner. Can Norris get onto the podium with his teammate? Yes, he can. Norris up into P3, Piastri P2. This is looking pretty good for McLaren at this current point in time. Last lap, we had Ricciardo ahead of us in P5 now because of that Verstappen DNF, but we're not going to be able to, unfortunately, overtake him. It's going to be a P6 finish for us. Hands together for Daniel Ricciardo, P5 in the RB. What a result for him. Definitely the best result for RB so far this season. We come home P6, so I think from P10 it's a decent enough result. Made up 2 positions on Sainz and Verstappen, of course, thanks to their failures, but we also got past Albon and Gasly, so did make a couple of moves in this race. Unfortunate that we couldn't get past Ricciardo. I definitely think we could have, but he was just hanging on with the DRS behind everybody else. But Fernando Alonso wins his first race since like 2013 or something. He wins the Chinese Grand Prix sprint race for Aston Martin. Another win for him. Awesome to see him win another race. May not be a main Grand Prix, but it is a sprint. And we are there in P6. But it is going to be another qualifying session now, as we have to qualify for the main Grand Prix. So this is very strange, going from a sprint race into another qualifying session in the F1 game. Q1 comes around, and we don't have many tyres because of the way the sprints work. You have a different allocation of tyres. We only have 3 new sets of soft tyres for this session. So basically, I've got a new set every session, so I only did 1 run each session on the new set of tyres because that was really my only option, you know. So it's kind of just what we have. I mean, we could have gone again on the used softs, but I don't think we would have improved. The wear is quite large around here, so just 1 run really in this Q1 session. As once again, a bit of a sideways moment around that corner. We ended up P1. End of that session, showing some good pace. Alonso down in P9, not as good from him. Really, 7/10 down on ours, not great. It is the same 5 drivers out in Q1. Both Hasses, both stake F1s, and Logan Sargent in the Williams in last position this time around. I think he managed P16 or P17 or something in SQ1, but for the main qualifying, unfortunately, he will be right at the back. Q2 comes around, and once again, brand new set of softs, 1 run, but with the pace we showed in Q1, I was pretty confident we could make it through to Q3, no real issues. As we head into the hairpin here, we've got one of the RBs ahead of us of, I think, Yuki Tsunoda. Both those guys getting through to Q2 once again. Of course, Ricciardo got through to SQ3 in the sprint qualifying, but no rain here to kind of mix up the order anymore, and that means that it is the usual 2 Astons, 2 McLarens, 2 Red Bulls, 2 Ferraris, and 2 Mercedes getting through to Q3. Both Alpines, RBs, and Albon in the Williams out in Q2, and that will then put us into qualifying 3, and I ended up doing 1 run on used softs, and then this run on the brand new final set of soft tyres. To see what we could do here, because we've been showing mega pace so far in this qualifying session. So honestly, I was thinking pole could be the option here. Now, I've talked in previous videos about the F1 calculator and whether it's correct or not. What I've been doing in previous ones is I've been doing the calculator, but then putting it down a couple of notches because I didn't think it was quite correct. For this race, just as a bit of a test, I did what it told me to. I put the difficulty at 100, which is what the calculator told me to put the difficulty at, which is about 10 higher than I've been doing for every race. My races have been around about 90 so far, difficulty. So it was about 10 difficulty higher, but I thought, you know what, we've had a mega start to the season. We might as well do what the calculator tells us to do to see what happens, just to test it out. And well, yeah, our pace has been good here, so maybe I do have to start using the calculator and actually going with it. There seems to be a lot of variables, a lot of differences, more so than in previous games with the difficulty levels, because you can just kind of hang on to the back of DRS with people. It's a bit strange in this game. There's definitely some changes that need to be made, but we are running at the highest difficulty we have all season so far. And as we round the final corner here, it was a purple sector 1, a green sector 2. We crossed the line P2, and it will be P2 for the main race here. Oscar Piastri went quickest, almost by just over 2.5 tenths quicker than me, so a mega lap for Oscar Piastri there. Verstappen's down in P4, Alonso's down in P5, but only a tenth behind me, so it's all pretty close there. But this is time for the race.
It's time again then for Formula One in Shanghai. Northwest of the thriving city of over 24 million people is a circuit that first featured in the championship calendar back in 2004. It played host to Formula One's 1000th Grand Prix back in 2019. We're here in the Yangtze River Delta today, home of the 16 corners that make up the Shanghai International Circuit. 54% of this 3.3 mile lap is taken at full throttle, and we'll be getting up to speeds of around 200 miles per hour with DRS assistance down the back straight before the cars break into the tight hairpin at turn 14. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. Oscar Piastri lines up on pole position, and Shaw completes the front row. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, Russell, Norris, Perez, Hamilton, Gasly, Ocon, Tsunoda, Albon, Ricciardo, Hülkenberg, Magnussen, Bottas, Zhou, Sargent, Verstappen and Carlos Sainz will start from the back of the grid. With preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track. And alongside me in the commentary box today, a man who I always look up to, which is easier said than done, Anthony Davidson. As we all know, every single driver wants to know what's required of them. And in the case of this driver, I think things are pretty stable at the moment. That they're doing what the team require. I know what we've got to do before the start of today's race, but what about our driver? What do the final hours look like for them?
Well, for them, you've got your pre-race rituals that you go through. You see different drivers that, some have got their headphones on, they're listening to the music. Some drivers really absorb the energy from the crowd and they're there waving to them. Other drivers, they go within themselves. They chat to their engineers, absorbing that information, that vital information that you need to carry you through the race. And, those pre-race rituals are essential to making things systematic. We do a lot of Grand Prix in a season, and the more systematic you can be, the easier you are within that environment.
Here we go for the Chinese Grand Prix on the front row of the grid for us, for I believe the first time this season actually, as we get underway with this race. It is a decent enough start for us. We're actually starting on hard compound tyres and a few people starting on mediums, but mostly actually hards in this race, as we had a good initial start, but Alonso has had an even better start and he's already hassling us round the outside of turn 1. He started P4, remember, not even P3, so he's had a mega start to this race. We're still side by side with our teammate as we come around the next corner onto this little straight here. It is Aston versus Aston, Shaw versus Alonso, youth versus experience, and he's still side by side with us. We cannot quite shake him here, and we don't have the traction out of that next corner, and Alonso gets himself up into second place. So the winner from the sprint race is showing some very good pace here in the main race as well, and we just have to let him go. We're struggling a little bit to get the temperature into these hard compound tyres off the start. Very unlikely to start, as we have a big moment around that corner again. Very strange to start on hard compound tyres, but that's what my strategy told me to do. And yeah, a lot of the people around me were doing the same thing, but so I just decided to go with it. As you can see, top left, Leclerc and Russell both on the mediums behind me, so they could be pretty rapid at the start of this race. But for now, we're just going to try and hold up behind Alonso. Piastri already got almost a second gap to Alonso in second place there, so he's had a pretty good start, the Aussie, in this race. He'd be going for his first full Grand Prix win. Of course, he won the Qatar sprint race in 2023 in real life, but is yet to win a feature Grand Prix race. So he's going to be going for that here, and he's got off to a good start in this race. We continue on to lap number 3. Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas is doing all right in P13 at the moment, but it looks like he's just pulling over a little bit there, slowing down as he heads into this corner. This may be another mechanical failure. Yes, it is. He's off the road. He's going to be pulling it over, and that's Hülkenberg with the first retirement of this race. The two Alpines getting feisty here, as well as Pierre Gasly goes up the inside of his teammate Esteban Ocon. Both these guys are in the top 10 actually at the start of this race, got promoted up because of Verstappen and Sainz having penalties, and they're currently sitting P9 and P10. Ocon manages to defend from his teammate for now, but as they head into turn 1, Gasly has the run and he has the DRS, and he's gonna go up the inside of his teammate. It is always a feisty battle between these two. We know that from real life. And they're still fighting it out, but in the end Gasly will get himself ahead of Ocon and up into 9th place, trying to score some points for Alpine. Alonso now has caught up to Oscar Piastri, and he is going for a move for the lead of this race. He won the sprint race. He wants to win the Grand Prix here as well, and he has gotten past Oscar Piastri and will now head on to lap number 8 as the leader of this race. Piastri, though, will have DRS as they head down the main straight and down to turn 1. And he'll make quite an easy move on Fernando into turn 1, and that puts Piastri straight back up into the lead. We're just kind of set behind these guys at the moment. Not a lot we can do. You can see once again, bottom left there on the minimap, trains form very easily on this game. We're being a little bit crazy as we have to, at the last second, move to the right. We wanted to go to the left, but Alonso went to the left. We went to the right. Alonso's gotten back past Piastri. We're now side by side with Piastri. A little bit of contact through the hairpin, so we end up having to kind of let him go and stay behind here, but that's now given Alonso a little bit more of a break out in the lead, and he will now lead the way, and he's already broken that 1 second gap as we get a few laps later as Charles Leclerc locks up, goes wide, comes back onto the track, makes contact with George Russell, and has lost in a little bit of his front wing. So that is devastation for Charles Leclerc. It's only a little bit of front wing end play. He might get away with it, but it is going to hamper him a little bit in this race. As on lap number 12, we saw past Oscar Piastri down the main straight into the hairpin. That now puts us up into 2nd place, and it is now an Aston Martin 1-2. What a race we're having so far for this team. McLaren doing good as well in 3rd and 4th. Sergio Perez trying to be the lead Red Bull driver here with his teammate having a grid penalty. Just made a move on Ocon up into P6 there. As Piastri is buckling under the pressure a little bit, he locks up, loses a position to his teammate and to George Russell as well. Unfortunate for Piastri, he was looking so good after his pole position. He's now down to 5th as we now come into the pits on lap 15. Alonso stays out, Perez stays out, Piastri does as well. We're in the pits with Lando Norris just behind us, and it is a good pit stop by the team. Finally, we've had a few pretty poor pit stops the last couple of races, but this time we're in and out in a pretty decent amount of time, about 2.6 seconds I believe it was, and we're kind of come out just ahead of George Russell, who came in earlier onto the hards. We're now onto the medium compound tyres, so we should be a little bit quicker at the moment in this race, but Russell, with those warmed up hard tyres, is really hounding us, and he's now right behind us, and we don't have anybody ahead of us because we're actually leading the race now. After Alonso had a bit of a poor pit stop, we are now leading this race, but then Russell is now going to take the lead of the race as he dives up the inside, takes the lead from us. We're now down to 2nd place. We've got a 2-second gap almost to Lando Norris in 3rd, so I don't know how we've managed to pull this gap out. Look, Alonso is way back there. He's had a terrible pit stop once again and has fallen back. We get back past George Russell on lap 18 into the hairpin, so we retake the lead once again, but he's going to be hounding us here. Now Lando Norris is caught up to the back of us as well. He's right behind here, and I think he's using some ERS because he's looking pretty rapid. There he goes, has a look to the outside, but it's going to be 3 wide almost as we head into turn 1. We stay ahead. Norris manages to get up ahead of Russell now, so it is becoming a 3-way battle for the lead at this point in time. Russell actually fallen back a little bit now, but now Norris is showing some supreme pace here, and he's going to go up the inside of us into the hairpin, and he will now take the lead of this race. Another new race leader in this race. Had a lot going on here. We've had Piastri, Alonso, myself, and now Lando Norris and George Russell leading the way in this race. We're going to then go back past him again though on lap 21, but he's going to try and outbrake us around the outside, but we're not. We throw our hand up, so we must have made a little bit of contact there, but as we then veer off into the grass a tiny little bit, not really paying much attention, but we are going to stay ahead of him for now. But he's going to have a very good run out of this corner, and I don't think we have the ERS to use, and he's going to go flying up the inside. You can see we're pretty much into single digits of ERS now, and Norris will get back into the lead. Further back, and Yuki Tsunoda currently in a points paying position in P9, hounding Leclerc, but it looks like he has now got an engine issue or some sort of issue. Yep, I'd say it's an engine issue due to that smoke, and he's going to be out of this race as well, the second retirement of this race. Yuki Tsunoda in the points, unfortunately out of this one. Sergio Perez trying to make his way through as well with his teammate all the way back in P12 at the moment. Perez trying to get on the podium for what would only be, I think, the second time this season, fighting with Hamilton, and he gets ahead of Lewis Hamilton round the final corner to take third place. He's also got the fastest lap at this point in time. We're still battling with Norris. It's looking like it's just going to be a battle between me and him for the win of this race. We're going to go to the outside. We didn't quite have the speed though to get the move done as he cuts over the curb a little bit there. I think that was a bit of a cheeky move by Lando, but we're just going to see if we can wait it out here, not do anything too crazy, maybe try and get a good run, but we just don't have the ERS. I'm really struggling to manage the ERS, but we're going to go for this. We're going to use as much ERS as we can. We're going to have a look up the inside. Oh, not quite enough room there. Just had to bail out of it. Norris kept his car on the outside, and unfortunately we're not able to make the move. Verstappen, who we really haven't seen this whole race, is finally up into the point and is now going for a move on Charles Leclerc for P8. So he will have gone from P19 to P8 in this race. What a comeback for Verstappen after that penalty. For us, unfortunately, we couldn't quite catch Norris in the last couple of laps, and we're going to end up coming home in P2. But it's going to be Lando Norris who gets his first race victory here in China, a race or two earlier than he did in real life when he got the win in Miami, but he wins this time in China. Lando Norris, we're here in second, and Perez finally on the podium again in third.
It's a performance to be proud of from our Chinese Grand Prix winners here today.
They had to be decisive with their overtaking today as they worked their way through the field. And those kind of race victories are so enjoyable because it's not just like winning from the front. They really had to work for it today.
As the winners make their way up to the podium, one can only imagine the celebrations that will take place at McLaren tonight. Congratulations to everyone on the team, securing the win and proving that they're a force to be reckoned with out on the track.
What a race for Lando Norris. He didn't have a very good qualifying. He was down in like P5 or P6, I think. His teammate on pole position, but unfortunately Piastri just fell down the order, thanks to a bit of a lockup mainly. But Norris picked up the pieces for McLaren, came back through, had supreme pace. We couldn't quite get him in those last couple of laps, and he gets his maiden Grand Prix victory here in China, round number 5 of 2024. We get another podium and another second place for a great result. And yeah, Perez getting back on the podium as well after a pointless finish in the sprint race. He will be happy with that at least, and I think he picked up fastest lap as well. Those are the points from the weekend. Unfortunately, even though he won in the sprint, Alonso ended up down to like P6 or something overall, and he finished P7 in the main Grand Prix there. So yeah, another poor weekend for Alonso. He's got to get some luck one of these days. Other than the sprint race, he's had a pretty terrible time of it this season. We close up to Verstappen in the championship. We're only 12 points behind him now in the Drivers' Championship. Alonso all the way down in P9 on only 34 points. He's a considerable amount of points. What's that? 50 points behind us in the championship. So yeah, really need to get some luck for Alonso. And in the Constructors, we're only 18 points behind Red Bull now as well, but McLaren are coming up close behind us there, as well as Mercedes and Ferrari. Only 1 point separates them. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.